All right, welcome to second technical session. Starting off with a good foot there. Welcome to technical session number 41, where we're going to get into our introduction to security. We're going to be talking about why security is an important element of an IT professional's role, even if you are not a specialized IT security professional. It's still a part of our job. Just like even if you are not a specialized network person, we still have to deal with networking, So we do have to have proficiency in a lot of areas, even if we do specialize in some. We're also going to be describing the most common types of threats and vulnerabilities. It's not all about viruses. Then identify different types of malware and social engineering threats. So, for this particular technical session, we want to keep in mind adaptability, because the threats to our networks and our systems are constantly evolving, changing, and becoming more creative. We have to be able to shift and move and adapt to the ever-changing environment in which we are placed. Maintaining that growth mindset. Just because I don't know something today does not mean I will not know it tomorrow. My intelligence is not fixed. I can develop new skills. I think there was somebody was talking about if you practice something for 9 minutes a day, you just pick any general skill, a basic skill. You practice it for 9 minutes a day for like 6 months, you'll be better than 93% of the people on the planet with it. It doesn't take that much. But we have to hone these skills. We can't just learn it once and walk away, because if you don't use it, you lose it. So we got to keep using it, keep evolving it, keep developing it, keep growing with it, and keeps our minds active. All right, overview, basic overview. Information security. This is the collection of technology standards and policies all working together in management practices that are applied to information to keep it secure. Why are we worried about information? Because for most businesses, that is the true value of that business. It's our secret sauce. It's how we handle things, how we market, how we train our employees. What are our methods of operation? What are our standard procedures? You can see the differences when you go from business to business to business. And when you come across a business that has stellar customer service, one of the things that you tend to notice, they're always busy. And a company that has horrible customer service, even if they have a decent product, nobody wants to deal with it. It's not worth it. So how we do things, what our products are, how these products are developed, all of that is information. And that is the core of our business. So the value of the information for the company can't really be measured, and it is important that we protect it. And there are different ways we have to protect it. There is no silver bullet. We have to layer our security. And first thing that needs to be understood is our company needs to understand how valuable the information they hold is, and what would be the outcomes if that information was lost. So if I'm a programmer and I design a super awesome program that's much lighter weight, like it takes up a lot less space in the drive and works 10 times faster than its competitor, amazing, right? What if the code is leaked? And everybody has it, right? Like, oh, but it's copyrighted. Yeah, change a couple lines of code. Once the information gets out there, you can't unring that bell. So we have to understand the value of our information. So the best way to kind of protect against stuff like that is to understand what are the possible security threats and vulnerabilities that we're facing on a day-to-day basis in the wild. Here's a short list, and there are subcategories in each of these. So we have general malware. We have social engineering, password attacks, zombie/botnets, man in the middle, which is now called an on-path attack, a zero-day attack, and then people just not following the best practice rules. Hey, don't let strangers in the building. Oh, they had an honest face. They seemed friendly enough. So, malware, short for malicious software. We were talking about earlier, when people think of any kind of bad program or malicious program that is on their computer, like, oh, I got a virus. Virus is just one type, and they serve very specific purposes. There's a lot of other stuff out there. So we have worms, Trojans, spyware, rootkits, and ransomware. And again, this is just a list of categories. There's subcategories underneath all of these. We won't be getting into all of them, but one of the main ones we will focus on would be viruses, because there are a variety of viruses that we need to kind of have a awareness of. So layers upon layers. Now, you need to memorize this list. This is the symptoms of malware or virus infections on a system. So programs loading slowly, taking a lot of time to do what we normally do on a regular basis. You know, why is this happening with regards to a virus? Is because it is using your initiation of that program to help the virus spread to other sections. Viruses need our interaction to spread from piece to piece in our systems. Files appear and disappear. So unusual files showing up on your hard drive, files start disappearing from your hard drive without any action from you. So one of the things that viruses like to do is delete programs, change programs, move programs, making it hard to find. And sometimes they do that with our system files, making it so that our system has difficulty operating. Changing program sizes. If you have a picture, and you took it, and that picture is about 3 to 5 megabits or megabytes, then you come back and that thing is 1 gigabyte for a single picture, there's probably something going on there. So your files change in size. They seem overly bloated. It also could be you download a program and it's supposed to be 300 megabytes or something like that. And when you download it, it's 350. This isn't what you downloaded. Something got added in transit or something changed. We need to look for something when we're downloading programs called a hash. See if I can find it real quick. So a hash, we'll get into a little bit more later, but it is a one-way encryption. But what it does is something very specific. It gives us what is called a checksum. This checksum basically lets us know if anything has changed. That is the main purpose of this system. It is a one-way encryption. There's no way to use a checksum and go backwards to what we did. All we get is this readout when we run our program through a checksum. And so if we have a 10,000 page book, and we go to page 3,952, go to the third paragraph and change the second sentence. First word is the, and we change it from an uppercase to a lowercase t. And that's all we do. And then we run this checksum again. This checksum is going to be completely different. It is specifically designed so small changes make a big difference in the checksum. So when we are downloading software from somebody, we should receive a checksum like this from their site, and then we run that same checksum on our end, and we know if the program they sent is what we received. So kind of a basic security measure. All right. That's kind of what we mean by changing file sizes and how we kind of recognize stuff like that. Unusual operating characteristics. Browsers, word processing applications, and other software begins to operate unusually, taking longer time to load. Certain pieces of the application, when you click on things, do not work the way they used to. Maybe it stops auto-saving or starts saving at weird times. File names start changing. Mysterious shutdowns or startups on your system. And then during this process, you hear your hard drive's going crazy, writing and reading and writing and reading. That's the virus moving throughout your system. Reboot or startup errors. So system suddenly doesn't reboot or gives an unexpected error message when you're booting up. Blue screen of death. Or you may lose access to certain drives or other resources because the virus has gone in and changed the settings, rendering them unusable. So these are your basic symptoms. It doesn't necessarily mean if you have these that it's guaranteed to be a virus, but these are things that you would definitely start considering viruses as an option, especially if you're exhibiting more than one of these symptoms. Questions on this? Try to see how many y'all are listening to your hard drive. Seems like it's moving a lot more than normal. Maybe not. I don't know. All right, viruses. So viruses, what do? So basically, they're trying to accomplish one of two goals, and the first one is render the system inoperable, make it so that computer no longer functions, works, and by whatever means possible. And in the process, if it's lucky, it gets to spread to another system via an email or something like that, and it can serve that purpose by infecting certain systems and then utilizing those systems to spread through the networks. Hey, check out this awesome link. I found this great video on YouTube. Go ahead and click it. Province, it's safe. You recognize my name, right? How do they spread? If your system is infected, the viruses will attach itself to every file in the system that it can and spread each time the user sends a file or document to other users. Vast majority today spread through email. All right, types of viruses. So each type of virus, and this is just a short list, there are a lot more than this. Each type of virus has a different strategy at which it's going to attack your system and a variety of different consequences. So we have the armored virus, the phage, companion, stealth, macro, resident, retrovirus, overriding virus, polymorphic, and multipartite. Let's see here. George, can you read to us about the armored virus, sir?
Armored virus is designed to make itself difficult to detect or analyze. Armored viruses cover themselves with protective code that stops debuggers or dissemblers from examining critical elements of the virus. The virus may be written in such a way that some aspects of the programming act as a decoy to distract analysts, analysis, while the actual code hides in other areas in the program. The key to stopping most viruses is to identify them quickly and educate administrators about them. The very things that the armor intensifies the difficulty of accomplishing.
Very good, thank you. So armored virus shields itself from being examined, detected, or disassembled to try to find out what makes it tick or what its objectives are. How does it attack the system? Let's see here, Savvy, can you read for us about the companion virus?
Sure. Companion virus attaches itself to legitimate programs and then creates a program with a different file name extension. This file may reside in your system's temporary directory. When a user types the name of the legitimate program, the companion virus executes instead of the real program, effectively hiding the virus from user.
There you go. So it kind of, as it's attached to that new program, it just creates essentially a similar name and tries to set it up so that program will show up first when you're trying to execute or run a program.
This would be like a duplicated application.
It wouldn't necessarily be duplicated, but essentially it'll have a version of itself that is just the infected version of the same program. So once you run it, but I guess, yeah, it is partially duplicated, but it's just creating another file that it's going to make it so that you will click on that one first, and then it will execute the virus and then open the real program. Because the virus could be running rampant in your system for a little while before you even realize it's there.
So that would be like an explanation as to like why I have an Adobe Acrobat Reader and like when I search it, two of them pop up.
It's a possibility. It could be that you just have a duplicate copy of it on your system too. So, but yeah, that is a possibility. I think Adobe's Reader is no longer supported, is it? Isn't it?
I'm not even sure. I stopped using it.
I think Adobe Reader is no longer supported, if I'm not mistaken, for PDFs. I'll have to double check that, but I think that's the case. All right, let's see here. Jamal, can you read for us about macro viruses, please?
Macrovirus exploits and enhancements made to many application programs. For example, Microsoft Office supports a mini basic programming language that allows files to be manipulated automatically. These programs in the document are called macros. Macroviruses can infect all the documents on your system and spread to other systems via email or other methods.
Thank you. So I'm assuming many of you all have heard of Python. So for the most part, how Python works is through the manipulation of macros in our system. That's why Python is so amazing at automating what we do. And macro viruses utilize these same little programs to kind of make things happen. Like they can make systems, make programs open up. They can make the programs do things. They can make the programs save and move files, add things to files, all that kind of fun stuff, all through the use of these macros. These macros are wonderful tools that have been used by admins and people for years to kind of make their work a little bit more efficient. In my old job, we used to have a record and play function macro set up in some of our software. Like if we had to do a repetitive task, like check out a container, and then we have to check out 100 different containers. There's certain things that need to be filled in and da 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 da. Well, we can record ourselves doing it one time, and then we bring it up, and then we hit the play button, and then it automatically runs it through everything we're going to do from there. We've created a macro or an automation process to make things run much smoother, speeds up what you need to do for the day, and make things easier. But the viruses can exploit those uses within our systems. Let's see here, Tutoria, can you read for us about the retrovirus, please?
Sorry, I was eating. Okay. Retrovirus attacks and bypasses the antivirus software installed on a computer. Retroviruses can directly attack an antivirus software and potentially destroy the virus definition database file. Destroying this information without your knowledge would leave you with a false sense of security. The virus may also directly attack an antivirus program to create bypasses for itself.
There you go. How cool is that? It literally goes in and attacks the very thing that is meant to stop it. And a couple of things it can do. It can either tell the antivirus to just kind of don't look at me, just pass over me, just pass over me. So no matter how many times it's scanning, it never scans the actual code that's causing the problem. And then also destroy its definitions. If it has no clue what it's looking for, your system is 100% clean every time. Congratulations. When in which case you may be riddled with viruses. So this one is particularly nasty in that sense. All right, Majid, can you read for us about polymorphic viruses, please?
Polymorphic virus changes from in order to avoid detection. The virus will attempt to hide from antivirus software. Frequently, the virus will encrypt part of itself to avoid detection. When the virus does this, it's referred to as mutation. The mutation process makes it hard for antivirus software to detect common characteristic of the virus.
Another kind of cool one, right? It's almost like a video game. It keeps changing what it is, encrypting itself and moving around, trying to avoid detection. So we have a definitions list. We have specific code we're looking for. But if we only see part of that code, it may not trigger an alert that something has gone wrong. And then it has enough awareness of itself to mutate after so many iterations or movements or what have you, to make it even harder to detect. So as it moves to different sections or what have you, it's going to change its code. It's going to change what parts of it are encrypted. See here. Iman, can you read for us about the phage?
Yeah. The phage virus alters other programs and databases. The virus infects all these files. The only way to remove this virus is to reinstall the programs that are infected. If you miss even a single incident of this virus on the victim system, the process will start again and infect the system once more.
Sounds like a Star Trek villain, the phage. The only way to deal with this is scorched earth. If it has even a toehold in any system, it has to be redone. It has to be fully purged, reset, reinstalled, to the point where you may just nuke the system entirely and rebuild it from scratch. That's how nasty this particular one is. So that is the phage. So it tries to spread as much as it can. We have to catch it early. If we don't catch it early, our only option is scorched earth. Let's see here, Fatih, can you read for us about the stealth virus?
Okay, stealth virus attempts to avoid detection by masking itself from applications. It may attach itself to the boot sector of the hard drive. When a system utility or program runs, the stealth virus redirects commands around itself in order to avoid detection.
So it puts itself in the program command chain. Thank you, Fatih. So it puts itself in the program command chain. It attaches itself to the boot sector. So relatively deep access on this. And it basically tells applications to move around it so it can hang out and do what it wants to do. And its main goal is to try to hide from applications and the system itself. So unlike the armored virus, which is trying to just protect itself, because it's essentially going to get detected, it knows it, but it's going to try to protect itself from being analyzed or us determining what exactly it's trying to accomplish, to the stealth, which is trying to avoid detection altogether. All right. McLeod, can you read for us about the resident virus, please?
The resident virus hides and stores itself within the computer memory, which then allows it to infect any file that runs by the computer. It will load the reapplication mode into memory, so it does not need to be executed for the infected files on others, rather than activates whenever the operation system loads or operates a system function. So the virus may be one of the worst kinds, as they can affect the system throughout even attacking itself as an antivirus application, which allows itself to infect any files by scanning by the program.
So think about how nasty that is. One, it's infecting your RAM. So anything you're using, it's just kind of going, oh, you're new, here, have a piece. Oh, you're new, here, take some of this. And so nasty, like the retrovirus tells the virus scanner to not look for it. This can use the anti-malware program as you're scanning your whole system. It's just saying, ooh, it's Christmas. And it's just handing out that virus to every possible file and section of your system. That's the resident virus. Resides in your RAM. Let's see here. Kelly, can you read for us about the overriding virus?
Overwriting virus effectively destroys the original program code, typically by overwriting data in the system's memory. Typically, users will need to remove the offended virus and then reinstall the original programs, which can be difficult if they were backed up or kept in a duplicate folder.
There we go. So overriding virus. Basically going in, writing over anything that you already have, destroying it, or basically forcing it to, once you've even discovered it, I hope you have backups, because it's going to render a lot of your systems and your files unusable. All right. Next, Vashon, can you read for us about the multipartite virus?
Attacks your system in multiple ways and may attempt to infect boot sector, all executable files, and destroy application files.
Excellent. Thank you, Vashon. So this one is a multi-pronged attack. So multipartite. It is attacking your system at multiple levels. So it's going to go deep for your boot sectors. It's going to hit your executables up top, and then try to get your applications as well. So to think of it, it's attacking your system at multiple levels. Do we need to know these? Yes, we do. Hopefully you got screenshots. They love to ask about what kind of malware or what kind of viruses is, that does these kind of things. So that's just our viruses. We got to get into other stuff too. We got worms. How is a worm different than a virus? A worm can reproduce itself. It's self-contained, and it does not need a host application to transport it. It can figure out ways to move through the system on its own. One of the more famous ones of this was the Stuxnet virus. They put this one on USBs and spread it around the centrifuges in Iran. And it was a worm specifically designed not to cause harm to any system except the centrifuge systems. And they use social engineering to get it close, because you drop a bunch of USBs around. What are people going to do? They're going to pick it up and be like, "Ooh, man, it's my lucky day. Found a free USB. Let me go check and see what's on it." They go and they plug it in. And then it auto runs on the system. And the Stuxnet, what it did was it basically spun the centrifuges up to dangerous levels while making the systems show normal readouts the whole time. So it was not known there was a problem until catastrophic failure. This managed to destroy, it was something along the lines of 40% of the centrifuges through a single virus. And it was a worm, excuse me. So how do they spread? Well, they do this by kind of replicating themselves, and whatever services they're capable of exploiting, they can use those services to move to other aspects of the system. Early versions of this would propagate in the RAM of the target and then use that to move to various systems that way. Modern ones use TCP/IP protocols, email, internet services, social media, any number of possibilities. Email is still a common one. If it gains access to your email, it can take your entire contact list and send out emails to all of them directly from you saying, "Hey, check out this link. It's awesome. I saw this great video. I figured you would appreciate it." And as the email has your send from address, the person receiving it is likely going to trust it and click on it. That's how the worms spread. Now, not all worms are bad. There was a famous one called the tamarin worm. And what it was it was being used because it was able to push IP version 6 protocols over an IP version 4 network. So it was able to cross those networks. And the hacker who designed it created this program so they could push viruses through these networks without them having to have compatibility issues going from IPv6 to IPv4. Well, this hacker was one of the first people to figure that out. So in the analysis of these worms, they took this and are now able to use that process, and it's pushed forward the industry and it made cross-version compatibility much easier. So sometimes we can take the bad things that we discover, repurpose them, reuse them, and use them for more productive means. This was one of those cases, the tamarind. All right. On from worms, on to spyware. Spyware basically monitors all your activity and responds by offering you pop-ups and advertisements. This is also known as adware. Y'all like cookies? Every website you go to offers free cookies to track and trace and database and watch you wherever you go so that they can better sell to you. Facebook's probably one of the best about this. They know everything about you. Some of you may be sitting out there going, you know what? I don't have a Facebook profile. I never bothered to sign up. Well, if you exist in more than 3 people's phones that have Facebook, congratulations, you have a Facebook account. It's a shadow account. All you have to do is they're just waiting for you to sign up. And as soon as they see your phone number, like, oh, hey, nice to meet you. Do you know this person, this person, this person, and this person? You ever get that when you sign into a system and all of a sudden they have a whole bunch of people that know you, even though you didn't give them access to your contacts? This is through cross-referencing. Spyware. This is the more above board, if you could call it that, methods of use for it. But there's some nefarious things too. They can use it to intercept credit card numbers, all that kind of fun stuff. Any interactions we have, if they can get themselves placed on your systems, they can start monitoring everything you do. And the thing is, the worst part about the entire bit of this, we ask for it. We say, yeah, sure, come on in, send me notifications. Yeah, you can have access to everything I do. You can track me across platforms. It's A-okay. I don't do anything bad anyway. You ever been, sitting there and then all of a sudden you get an advertisement and it feels like they're listening to you? You ever had that happen? Like, man, I was just talking about a TV yesterday. And now they're sending me advertisements for the very TV I was looking at. It's more nefarious than that. It's location tracking services. They may notice that every time you go to a Costco, every time you go to a Target, every time you go to a Walmart or something like that, you may hang out in the TV section for 30 seconds longer than any other section. So they know you may be in a market for a TV. And if the store that you go to the most has a sale on a particular TV, that's the one they're going to share for you. The metadata that they have on us is incredible. And what they can do with that metadata is incredible. They can predict behavior. They can encourage behavior. All of this done through spyware and data mining. How do we get this? Legitimate sites will do it and will ask for it. Infected sites, we may go there and get hit by a site if it's a less reputable site or not, one that's monitored pretty heavily for cybersecurity. And we think we're accepting legitimate cookies, but we're also getting, some bad actors programs as well. On from there, on to Trojans. Not talking about Brad Pitt, though it does come from the same legends. So a Trojan essentially tries to create a backdoor or replace a valid program during installation. And then it kind of accomplishes its mission under the guise of a legitimate program. So it sneaks in under the guise of a legitimate program, much like the Trojan horse, the old Greek myth, where they built the wooden horse as a gift to, I think it was Neptune or something like that. And then the Trojans saw it and they're like, oh, wow, we can't just burn it because it's a gift for the gods. And they bring it in, and there were Greek soldiers hidden inside the horse. And as soon as everybody went to sleep, they all broke out of the horse and opened the gates and let the armies in. So that's kind of what they're doing here. So it compromises your security system. It's behind your firewalls, and then it can call home and open up the door for somebody else to come in. So how do they spread? They may be included as an attachment, as an update. This is why many phone companies and stuff like that do not like you downloading third-party applications, because you have a much higher probability of bringing something like this into the house. How do we detect them? Well, one way is to do a port scan on your own systems and see if ports are open that should not be. Are there certain types of applications running that should not be running on your system? So if you have something opening up an internet portal that should not be accessing the network in your system, this is a good indicator you may have a Trojan. Because what they're going to do is they're going to beacon back to the home office, whoever built them. So they're going to send an ICMP packet out there every time, just maybe 1 or 2 a minute. It's not going to eat up a lot of data, but what it's doing is it's leaving the door open for them to come back in through your firewalls. Just 1 ping at a time. So Trojan comes in under the guise of a legitimate program in order to compromise your systems, and they can be in your system for years before you know they're there. Because the person who's getting access to your system may not be trying to destroy anything. They may not be stealing anything. They may just be monitoring, gathering information that way. Because the longer they can maintain an infection, the longer they can maintain data surveillance, the more they can gather. All right, rootkits. So these are software programs, the ability to hide certain things from the operating system. So there may be a lot of things that are running that don't even show up in your task manager. Because that's going to be one of our first lines of defense, to try to see if something's happening. Is we're going to go to task manager to see if anything weird is going on. But there's a lot of stuff that may not even show up there. Some connections may show up or may be established that do not show up in your netstat. So rootkits are utilized to mask the presence of itself as it attaches itself to basically the kernel of your system. So it'll take function calls where you're asking for the netstat or you're asking for the task list, and it's basically saying, okay, just don't show these things. And unfortunately, they're designed to get around antivirus and anti-spyware programs if they're not kept up to date. So we have to try to catch it in the process of installation. It's the best time to try to catch it. One of the more famous rootkits that have been going around recently, and it effectively is a rootkit, even though the company argues against it, is the free game out there called Valorant. Any fans of Valorant out there?
I'm more of a Counter-Strike dude.
Okay. So yeah, Valorant, in an effort to install anti-cheat spyware, drills all the way down to the kernel and attaches itself. So saying it's trying to prevent you from cheating, but you know, it gives itself quite literally full access to your system. And we allow it to. It's like, please, you know, type in your administrator password to allow us to install. So it goes all the way down to the core. So rootkits. I believe so, Jose. Ransomware. Lot of examples of this over the last few years. Probably one of the more common strikes. Basically, they come in, they try to get you to click on a link, and then they encrypt all of your files and say, hey, pay us money and we won't delete your stuff. We won't get it back. So, you know, there are some examples of this where if you keep solid backups, you can get around this and don't have to pay. But if you don't catch it soon enough and they're able to infect your system restores, then they'll make you pay a lot more. The good news is the likelihood of you getting your files back after you paid are extremely high. Why is this? Because if word gets around that people paid and they didn't get their files back, how many people do you think are going to pay?
No one.
No one. So that's the good news with regards to ransomware, is they are incentivized to give you your stuff back. Still no fun, you know, when you have to go out and buy a $2,000, you know, Amazon gift card or something like that. Although there's a lot of great videos where you have the cyber professionals wreaking havoc with these guys. So if you want some good, you know, karma videos, those are fun ones to watch. So that is ransomware. On to social engineering. The overwhelming majority of systems breaches are because of this. Just like the vast majority of your systems issues are user error. Remember we talked about this? It's not usually a software or hardware issue. It's usually a user error issue. The vast majority of your security breaches are people. Does anybody know what con is short for in con man? And say, oh, that guy's a con man. You know what that's short for? Anybody?
Connoisseur.
Connoisseur? That's funny. It's short for confidence. They call them confidence scams. And it's not their confidence in pulling off the scam. It's your confidence that you can't be scammed. That is what they're playing on. You need to get it into your head right now. Everyone is susceptible to social engineering attacks. Everyone. Nobody is immune. You can be more protected than others if you are aware and alert. But everybody is susceptible to this. This is why it's so effective. All they have to do is hit the right buttons. They have to be able to create a sense of urgency, appeal to authority, something that is going to create in you a desire to help them. So there's many reasons why they do this. They're trying to gain physical access. They're trying to gain information from you, be it a username, password, a code, something. Some of the typical ones that you will see are phishing, spoofing, shoulder surfing, and tailgating. And there's another version of tailgating, which is called piggybacking. So, phishing. What is phishing? Anybody here ever get an email saying, hey, your Bank of America password has been exploited. We're afraid somebody is going to gain access to your account. Please click here in this handy dandy link we gave you to go and reset up your sign in and password. And you're sitting there thinking like, wait a minute, I don't have a Bank of America account. Anybody ever get those? About the text messages, there was a breach on your Amazon account. Please click here so your package doesn't get lost. These are phishing examples. Car warranties. I used to love the car warranty guys because I always tried to sell them road service when they would call me. If they wanted to pitch me, they had to listen to my pitch first. So I would do that when I was in transportation. I'd keep them on the phone for like 15, 20 minutes, just pitching them like how awesome our roadside service was. Since they did warranties, this would be a perfect pairing. They usually hang up. Kind of make me feel bad. So phishing, they're pretending to be somebody else in order to try to gain information from you. And so the general thing is they're going to try to hit as broad a net as possible. So you're sitting there going like, I don't have a Bank of America account. Why are they sending me a Bank of America email, even though I don't have an account? Well, you may not have one, but millions of other people do. And they're just trying to go through email databases and send it out to as many people as possible. They send it out to 10 million people. Maybe 1,000 click on the link. This is kind of why we were talking about with Mac, when Mac was saying, yeah, we're immune to viruses. It wasn't that they were immune, it's that there wasn't a big enough pool there to make it worthwhile. This is where phishing is valuable. You're casting as broad a net as possible. Now, this can be done over the phone, via email, and basically anybody who isn't positively identified as who they say they are. So some of the examples they'll tell you is you make sure to verify the username, make sure things are spelled correctly. You can hover over the link and see what the actual link is and see if it's actually associated with that company. What's funny is sometimes you'll have them and it says do not click in there so that they remind themselves not to click on those links when they send them to people. Yeah, check and see if anybody else is CC'd in the email or BCC. So this is phishing. Now there are variations to phishing, and there's two that we need to be aware of, and that is spear phishing, which regular phishing, I'm casting as big a net as possible. What do we think spear phishing is going to be?
Targeted.
A lot more targeted to a specific group, right? So if I'm spear phishing, I may target a specific company. So I'm going to go to Bank of America's website, or I'm going to do some OSINT, which is open source intelligence, and I'm going to basically create a database of all the people who work at Bank of America. And because I've received emails from Bank of America, I know that their email standard is firstname.lastname@boa.com. So then all I need is the first and last names of everybody who works there. Bang, I instantly have their email list. Then I can start sending specific emails to all the people in that organization. Hey, this is Kelly from IT. We're going to be running a update this weekend. Please click on the calendar link below and let me know what would be the best time for me to work on your system so I do not bother you during your peak hours. And I make my email look like it comes from Bank of America. So I'm targeting them specifically. That's spear phishing. Then you have what's called whaling. So what do we think whaling is? We know what phishing is. We know what spear phishing is. What do we think whaling is?
Targeting executives in a company.
Targeting executives. High value targets. So we're going to be putting a lot more resources into a single target versus trying to broad spectrum attack the entire company. You know? See if you can gain access to their systems, their bank accounts, anything. So very, very much more targeted to a specific target. That's your phishing variations. Spoofing. This would be you masquerading as another user or device. So instead of just saying I'm Kelly from IT, maybe I know that Majid works in IT there, and then I call and I pretend to be Majid. So instead of just throwing out some random name and saying I work there hoping you won't check, I'm using a legitimate person's name and possibly even their credentials to try to get you to believe more so that it's me. So that is spoofing. One of the ways that they may do this, anybody here, or the majority of you should be aware of multi-factor authentication, at least from a basic sense. You know, you go to log into your bank account, it says, okay, we're going to text you a code, all that fun stuff. You know that? Fun little scam they love to do, because that falls under the something you have category, and likely the hacker is not going to have your physical phone there, but they may have gotten a hold of your sign-in and password. And so they'll call you and pretend to be the bank because they already know your sign-in and password to the bank, but they don't have your phone. So they're going to call you and say, hey, I just wanted to check with you real quick. It seems there may have been a breach on your account. We need to verify your last couple of transactions just to make sure that you're you. And they're like, oh, okay, that's great. I appreciate you calling me. Like, but first, just to verify that you are who you say you are, I'm going to send you a code so that you can authorize it and tell me so I know that I'm speaking to who I'm supposed to talk to. And so they're like, okay, you ready for the code? And then they'll put in your name and password, send the code, and then you give them the multi-factor pass to get into your bank account. Then they just keep you on the phone for a couple minutes, say like, yeah, these last 3 transactions, were they yours? Yeah, those were me. You know, I went to the gas station, I did this, I did that. Oh, okay, well, we just wanted to be sure because it just seemed like unusual activity for your account. Like, oh, thank you so much for calling. They now have access to your bank. And it's through a social engineering attack. You voluntarily gave them the information. It just took the right buttons to click. Now, other examples of spoofing we talked about before. If you use things, if you're pretending to be another device. So we've talked about pretending to be another person or from a different organization. What about devices? Yes, Andrew.
So I understand spoofing is dangerous for like, phone numbers and stuff like that. But what about like when people can people do a lot with your information if they have like the last 4 of your SSN?
They can do a decent amount, but the thing is they might be able to, if they can gain access to other records, use that information to like financial institutions. Like if you have a 401k or something like that, may use the last 4 to authorize you to get into that account. So they can do damage with it. They may not be able to open new accounts, but they can exploit existing accounts. Because most times they don't ask for your entire social security number, they only ask for the last 4, right? So other types of spoofing. So we talked about so-called security measures that for the purposes of the exam are considered security measures, but in real life are not. And those would be MAC filtering and IP filtering. So we can create virtual machines and then put virtual NICs in them and then put specific IPs and MAC addresses in. So if we can get a hold of your MAC address, we can then impersonate your machine on the network or gain access to the network if they're trying to prevent us through the use of MAC address filtering. And it's very easy to do. If you can create a virtual machine, you can spoof a MAC address and instantly bypass MAC filtering. So usernames and passwords, if you can get your hands on those, and then email addresses. You can spin up an email address to say whatever you want. And that's why you know, they may not be able to get the exact name, but they might be able to get really close or close enough to where you would overlook it, like put in a 0 instead of a O or something along those lines, to where your eyes will look right over it and not consider it as a possible fake. So those are ideas of spoofing. Shoulder surfing. Trust no one. So a lot of people, when they think about systems and companies and stuff like that getting hacked and all that stuff, they're assuming that the attack is coming from the outside, when a very large proportion of it is coming from the inside. And it could be disgruntled employees trying to damage the systems because they're unhappy with the company. It could be for money, stealing information to help out a competitor. Espionage is a thing. And it could be accidentally, you know, hey, click on this survey to see, you know, what Harry Potter house you fall into. Through that, you give the answers to a lot of your challenge questions, and then they go, yeah, you're Slytherin, whatever. And then through that, they know the street you grew up on, they know your first pet, they know your first car, and all that. These are ways they find out this information. Goofy little online surveys that people fill out. But what about inside the company from an intentional standpoint? Shoulder surfing. So a coworker, somebody else may stand just over your shoulder while you log in for the day to get your sign-in and password. Why would they do this? You say they already have access. Well, if I'm going to be doing something potentially highly illegal, I'd much rather do it under your sign-in than mine. If I'm going to steal information, if I'm going to destroy files, I am not going to do that under my sign-in, because then I'd be legally liable. I'd rather throw you under the bus. This is where shoulder surfing is a thing. So be aware of people standing over your shoulder when you are logging in, or when you're signing into any other systems. So ways we can get against this: be aware of your surroundings, you know, make sure to look around as people are, you know, as you're signing in, just to make sure there's nobody standing there looking over your shoulder, what have you. Use privacy filters so that if they are not straight on, if they're off to the side and trying to look in, it's, you know, blacked out, they can't see it. They have privacy filters for your phone too. So shoulder surfing. Tailgating. Oh, I love this personal one. So how many times have you been going into an office or an apartment building or what have you, and you see somebody come up carrying heavy stuff, and you're just like, you know what? I'm going to be nice today. Here, I'll hold the door for you. Come right on in. This is played upon. One of the quickest ways to bypass keypad security is to make it look like you're struggling holding packages, because people don't want to be jerks. They don't want to just slam the door in your face like bam, where's your key card? No, they want to be nice and go, hey, here, I got this for you. And understand from a cybersecurity standpoint, if somebody has physical access to your systems, they own your systems. Whether or not those systems make it to the end of the day is completely at their will. If someone has physical access, they own your systems. So they will tailgate behind a legitimate user to gain access to a higher security area. And you may or may not be aware of it. If you're not aware of it, this is a tailgate. So you open the door, you walk in, you're heading towards the elevator, they run up behind you, grab that door right before it closes, pull it open, and walk in behind you. So that's tailgating. Piggybacking is you knowingly letting them in, like, yeah, come on, I'll get you in. But it is a form of tailgating. So especially if you're getting into higher security areas, it is highly important that we educate our employees. I understand you want to be nice. I understand that, you know, it seems like the rude thing to do, but everybody needs to swipe on their own card. So this still is social engineering. We need to educate our users and work professionals so that we can be armored against stuff like this. And there's other methods we can put in place to kind of protect against it as well. How are we feeling? Are we as warm and fuzzy as we came in after lunch? Do we want to take a quick break since we're about an hour in? No break? All right. All right. Yeah, about 10 slides away. So password attacks. We're going to get into what constitutes a really strong password later, but we also need to talk about how they attack our passwords. How do they get past these kind of things? So there's four main ways that we usually see with regards to password cracking. You have what's called a brute force, which is basically, you know, best way to think of it is kind of like if you have a 4-key pin, it goes 0000, 0001, 0002, 0003, and it keeps putting in codes until it hits the right one. It's a brute force attack. Very systematic, but just kind of going through every possible combination to try to get through it. Then you have dictionary attacks, which is typically going to be any possible known language, every word in those languages, but they may go more targeted depending on the types of people they're attacking their passwords on. We have rainbow tables, which tend to be lists of hashes, password hashes. But we'll kind of get into these here in a minute. So brute force, two kinds that we can do. There's online and offline. So online is basically they're going to your account and they're trying to get the access to your account. What would we use to prevent this?
Two-step authentication.
Not two, well, I mean, two-step, yeah, it might be a possibility, but what would we use to prevent them from, you know, putting in 20,000 attempts on our password?
Oh, set a password limit.
Password limits, right? So you get 3 chances, and then you're locked out. And either you have to contact an administrator to get back in, or you have to wait an hour, cooling off period. So brute force is less effective online because of the simple advent of the security policy. It can't sit there and just keep hammering away at a password until it gets what it wants. But if the hacker can get a hold of the password file of the company, which is typically encrypted, it can take that password file and get as many attempts as it wants to try to crack that password. So then it can brute force it offline through the use of that file. They can keep going until it hits the right one, and then it's good to go. But that would require them, again, getting that password file. Dictionary attack. Again, contains words from the dictionary. Some people will say, you know what? Most hackers are, they use English, because they're dealing, here in America, going after our companies and all that stuff. So they typically use English. Well, I speak Gujarati. So I'm going to use that as opposed to English, and nobody will seem to figure that out. This is not the appropriate thought on this, because they will have basically every known language. If there is a dictionary for that language, they will use that in their possible attack. If you say, I'm going to be clever, and I'm going to replace all my E's with 3's, all my 1's, or my L's with 1's, and stuff like that, they take this into account too. So this is far more targeted than a brute force, because you're going to start with standard words and combinations. Again, much like a brute force, these attacks would be performed offline because you only get so many attempts, right? So get the password file, work on them offline, and this is going to be a much faster approach of getting to the password file itself. Rainbow tables. So we talked about the hashing, right? Remember that little thing I showed you at the beginning, that checksum? Well, when you're sending a password over the internet or over a network, it's typically not the password itself. They're going to send a hash of the password you sent and see if it matches up with what they have. And so they're not going to openly advertise what type of hashing algorithm they use. But if you can figure that out and you can see the hash that got sent, you can use databases or rainbow tables to find out what it would take to create such a hash. There's an old thing called a birthday attack. Now there's a truism, essentially. If there are 15 people in a room, 2 of those people will have the same birthday. Not month, but day. So early versions of hashing algorithms, you could essentially duplicate a hash with something completely different. So your password may be, I love IT 2134, and it may create the same hash as Fellowship of the Ring. So 2 completely different things creating a similar output. So they will have rainbow tables that will essentially, they'll have as many permutations as they can to try to solve as many of these as they can. If they see your hash, they can run it into your rainbow table and see what it would take to create that exact same output. And then they could put that in as your password. So hackers will have tables of this stuff so that they can compare it to what output they're getting and see what it is they can use to bypass. And then hybrid is usually a combination of your dictionary and brute force attack. And then they'll usually, like if they have specific targets in mind, they may use what's called OSINT, which is open source intelligence, which is basically ways to sleuth through social media and look through, because you may not share those challenge questions if directly asked, but they can go online, they can see your spouse's birthday, your kid's birthday, what year you graduated high school, roll that back so they know what year you were born, get your birthday, big events in your life, and then use combinations of these names and dates of if your family members, friends, favorite cars, all that kind of fun stuff, pets names, and use those in your passwords. And so instead of taking 10,000 attempts trying to put in every random letter in the, or random word in the dictionary, they can sit there and start with using your family member names, birthdays, and stuff like that in various combinations. Questions on this? All right. Zombie or botnet. So a bot essentially is a type of malware that installs itself on a large number of computers. This is typically through infected emails, websites, Trojan horses, all that kind of fun stuff, shared media, and it could be laying dormant for years and you would never know it's there. When the moment it's installed, the hacker is able to connect to it at that point and then issue a certain level of control over your system. One thing they may use to do this is at a set time, direct all the computers to take the same action at the same time, which is direct all machines, like one of them would be direct all machines to send spam messages as fast as they can at a particular target. And this is what we would call a denial of service attack. You're trying to overwhelm a system so that it cannot function. Also can be used to perform phishing and all that stuff, so it can't be traced back to the actual hacker, and a variety of various uses. The individual computers are called zombies. The network together are called botnets. And the hackers that pull them together and harvest all these are called farmers. And a lot of times they develop botnet armies and then sell them to somebody else for use. Certainly, they may specialize in just creating these botnets, and then eventually they sell it off to somebody else, and then that person uses it for whatever purpose they want. Probably because general IT was slow in the uptake, Brandon. All right. So, man in the middle, also called an on-path attack. Essentially, what's happening here is the hacker finds a way to insert themselves in between the communication of two different devices. They can do this on the network by essentially making you send communication to them thinking they're the gateway, and then they will forward communication onto the gateway. And then they now are in between you and the gateway and can monitor all transactions being made, and if necessary, make changes to that communication on the fly. So they are now directly in between you and whatever you're trying to communicate with. So this can happen on the network, like we explained. It can also happen over the net.
Can you explain that example one more time, please?
Sure. So on the network, I am able to essentially trick your computer into thinking I am the gateway to get out to the internet. So I essentially have gone in and polluted what's called the address resolution protocol cache. So when you go there and it says, here's the IP for the default gateway, I replace it with my own. But I know that I'm in between you and the gateway. So now I can put a pass-through between me to the gateway so that you can get out. But I now have the ability to monitor all the traffic that comes through. So if you're logging into your bank account, I get to check it out. If you're sending emails to my supervisor saying that I'm kind of creepy and spying on you, I get to check it out and delete the email before it even gets there. Or maybe deflect and say, no, instead of, Kelly P, I just delete that and put Kelly A. So I can modify information as it goes through because I am directly in the flow. I am on path. All right. Next up, evil twin. Kind of like a man in the middle, slightly different. So evil twin is typically used with wireless protocols. And what would happen is like I would go to a busy area or to an office or something along those lines, and I would get the sign in and password to the free Wi-Fi. You know, like you go to Starbucks or whatever, you get a coffee and they give you the Wi-Fi sign in and password so you can sign in and check your bank account while you're drinking your latte or whatever. And there's always that inevitable college student sitting there working on that paper for hours and hours on end. It's just kind of odd. Well, they can set up a Wi-Fi or wireless access point themselves once they have that sign in and password to the access point. And then they can do something that's called a deauthorization attack, which basically is you send out a pulse to all the wireless devices telling them to disconnect from the Wi-Fi. And once you've said basically disconnect from the Wi-Fi, I turn on my wireless access point and it has the exact same SSID and password as the legitimate one. I may not get all of the people connecting to it, but I may get a good chunk of them. And now they got to go through me to talk to the internet. And so I can monitor everything they do. And a deauthorization attack is really easy to do. In fact, you can buy a watch on Amazon for $25 that does just that. Takes everybody off Wi-Fi. They use them in hotels. I think the Hilton chain or whatever, one of those big ones, like it was either Hilton or Hampton, got sued because what they would do is people would bring their own Wi-Fi into the hotels rather than pay for Wi-Fi. They would have their own little hotspots that they would bring with them, little jetpacks, or use their phone as a Wi-Fi, because we all know hotel Wi-Fi is terrible. It's slow. You know, the security is awful, all that fun stuff. So I want to bring my own with me and use it, right? Well, hotels would regularly send out deauth attacks constantly so that you couldn't really connect to your Wi-Fi or download anything, and it would cause all kinds of problems, so that you would be forced to call down to the desk and be like, oh, I can't get a good cell signal. Can I please go ahead and pay the $20 to get your Wi-Fi? So they found out that the hotels were doing this, and the hotels got sued.
Would it not work against their own Wi-Fi?
Yeah, but typically you're plugging into their networks usually. But yeah,
Okay.
you know, because like you have a little plug-in network at in the hotel room.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it would work. A deauthorization attack would also work against their Wi-Fi too. But since they were forced to stop doing that, then now they do Wi-Fi. But back in this time, I think this was like 10 years ago, it was basically like, oh, you don't have a network cable, we'll send one right up to your room. Okay. Like each page brings more joy. 0-day attack. So what is a 0-day attack? This is vulnerabilities discovered in live environments before a patch exists. So it is 0-day until we have a means of fixing it. So from the moment you discover it until it's fixed. Here's the scary thing. There are 0 days out there that are like a decade old. We've known about them. They've been out there. No fix has been created. They're just there. So there's a few different types of those watches out there, George. But how do we prevent a 0-day? How do we monitor for a 0-day? Remember me telling you that cybersecurity professionals and hackers tend to coexist in the same spaces. They sleuth on the same sites. They're going to monitor hacking community websites in order to try to find or be alerted to early, instances of a 0-day. On our networks, we can create what are called honeypots or honey nets, which are essentially fake computers or fake networks to draw in hackers or draw them away from our current systems. And it's either one, to try to keep, redirect them away from our stuff, and two, to monitor what they do and see what tools are they using and what exploits they're able to, move past. That also can give us a heads up as to a 0-day vulnerability of our systems. They come out on a regular basis, and broad range of technologies. It could be the smoke detector in your house. It could be your refrigerator, your doorbell, your phone, your computer, your TV. If it's able to hook up to the network, it is vulnerable. It has an attack surface. Once the vulnerabilities are discovered, it becomes a 0-day, and we have to be able to patch it. You haven't seen the Ring smoke detectors, Andrew? They go off, they essentially send a message to your phone. Ding, ding, ding. Your CO2 or your carbon monoxide warning just went off, all that kind of fun stuff. There was a casino in Las Vegas that was hacked. And how they figured out eventually how the hackers got in was through a thermostat in one of the fish tanks. It was a networked thermostat. They were able to get past it through the Internet of Things. It was already linked into the network, so they bypassed the security by going straight through the thermostat into the servers.
How do you even think of that?
That's what I'm saying. The hacking community is extremely creative. And through all the destruction and bad things that they do, they actually can show us amazing ways to use the current technology we have. So it's not all bad. Doesn't mean they're good people. Doesn't mean what they're doing are good. But what they can do is show us interesting and innovative ways to use our networks and our technology to do other things.
Yeah,
Kinda
and
like, go ahead.
I heard some of them get hired as white hat hackers, basically. Places pay them to hack them to see any problem, any security problem they are having, so they can fix it.
That does happen from time to time, yes. And bounty hunting is a thing. So when usually companies will have bounties out there if you can find bugs in their software. Most major companies have this, and there are hackers that essentially make their living this way. They find the exploits, they go to the companies and they say, here, I found this this exploit in your code. Here's how you patch it up. Thank you very much. Here's a check for $40,000.
Yeah, Apple have one, and Microsoft. I saw Apple had one like for $3 million when they first released the iPhone 14. They were talking like anybody that can hack them, they will be welcome to do so. And
they'll either hire them on full time or they'll pay them for that one particular bounty.
Definitely.
And yes, Savannah, this would be considered ethical hacking. Other ways that ethical hacking works is there are companies that are required by law to have their systems tested once every so often. Like I think with credit card companies like Visa, MasterCard, and all that stuff, it's like once a quarter. So a third-party company has to come in and try to breach their systems. And so there are companies out there that's all they do. They get hired by other companies to come and see how secure your systems are. There's a certification for it in CompTIA. It's called Pen Test Plus, where you would work on it. They operate in teams. They have what's called red team, blue team, and white team. Red team is your attacking team. Blue team is your defense team. And they may or may not be aware that the attack is going to happen, because if you know attack's coming, what's going to happen, you're going to be on high alert, right? So they may or may not tell the blue team that the attack is going to happen. And then you would have a white team, which is essentially the referees. They're the ones who set the rules of engagement. Here are the systems you're allowed to attack. Here's the type of attacks that are okay to use. And then they would monitor what was going on. So This is a bit of a thing.
So these people are eating, sleeping, and breathing IT only.
Some people.
Yeah, they get paid. One of them got paid 20 million for the Microsoft bounty.
Yeah.
In
So
total,
depending
we
on what you can
found
get.
13 of them.
So I mean, and it's really cool because they do these live fire exercises all the time. They call them capture the flag. And so they have conventions and they'll have capture the flag games where essentially you'll have attacking teams and defending teams, and you're kind of doing both at the same time, and you have to achieve certain objectives through their systems to win. And so they essentially create games or whatever to kind of test your skills against each other and all that stuff. And that is actually considered valid experience to go work in cybersecurity. If you like get involved in these communities, they have them on like Meetup and stuff like that, where they'll have hacker communities that'll get together and do these kind of exercises to capture the flag games and all that stuff, and ethical hacking, and try to break into systems and stuff like that legitimately. And they will consider that valid experience to get involved in a cybersecurity job. So, yes, Emilio.
Is there like a certification, like you mentioned, like the pen test? But like there's another one that I've heard. It was like the PCI certification.
PCI.
It has to do like I think like credit card companies or like audit companies.
Yeah, I mean, trying to think of the credit card one. It's like PCMCIA or something like that.
Something like that.
I'll have to look into it again. I can't think of it off the top of my head. So, but we'll take a look at it. So we have all these best practices. We know for a fact that we are going to try to create the best secure environment that we possibly can. We're going to train our employees to operate in a manner where they are rude to guests and do not allow them in the building. You know, so we're going to have these best practices established and created because we know there is no silver bullet to security. We can only create layers. And those layers can involve hardware, software, physical security, and best practices. So in our organization, we are going to essentially define the absolute minimum security measures expected of our users. Don't go to these sites. Don't click on hyperlinks. Verify things before you would pass on any information. And we would wrap all these up in what would be called a AUP, or acceptable use policy. And this would describe some details as to the actions and functions that are allowed on the network, what is expected on the network, and what is not allowed on the network. And you would have each of your employees read and sign this, and then it also would essentially notate out what are the consequences of not adhering to the acceptable use policy. At my previous organization, you had to agree to the AUP every single time you signed into the computer. There was no, saying you didn't know it existed. You quite literally had to acknowledge it and basically digitally sign it every single time you logged in. All right. Got a couple questions here. Oops. Now that we have come to the end, we should be able to explain why security is an important element of a IT professional's role. We started getting into some of the most common threats and types, vulnerabilities that we would come across on a regular basis. Sorry to hear that, Savvy. And yeah, please let us know when you're good. Describe the most common types of threats, and then identify different types of malware and social engineering threats. And again, this is just a short list of some of the most common ones that we come across. There are variations and subcategories to many of these, and combinations as well. Any questions, thoughts, concerns? right, go ahead and stop.